And the first item of business is to confirm that the clerk has published a notice of the meeting as required.
Mr. President, yes, notice has been published.
Okay, and we'll note that the commissioners, 4 are present. We do have Mr. Altman is absent. And the next item of business then is to ask the assessor if his work has been completed.
It is, and we have the assessment roll here.
Okay, and are you ready to make your report?
Mr. President, I am.
Okay, well, we'll let you go ahead and make your report, and then after he's made his report, we'll open the meeting to citizens who have concerns about the valuation of their property. So,
thank you, Mr. President. I do have a quick little PowerPoint that I wanted to use to demonstrate how the median values are taken into account. That's basically what we do all year is study valuations and how, through the mass appraisal system, these medians are utilized. In this little slideshow that I have here, I'm utilizing a 7-unit condo building. And I utilized an odd number because it's easier to determine the median with an odd number of sales. Here we show a typical building here within Dickinson. For this study, like I said, we're using 7 units. And to determine that there's inconsistency in the marketplace, started off with unit number 1 selling. It sold a month ahead of everything else, and it sold at a discount. The reason it sold for the discount is the builder wanted to get it occupied, have a car sitting in the garage when other prospective buyers would come by. Following that, the other units. Unit 2 sold for the $200,000. That's the target price that the builder had. Shortly after that, unit number 3 sold for $205,000. That buyer didn't negotiate quite as well. Unit 4 sold just after that for the target $200,000. And then unit number 5 sold to somebody whose daycare and job was within walking distance, and it was also the last ground floor unit, so she paid full price. Number 6 also negotiated to the target price of $200,000. And then about a month after that last sale, the builder gave a discount on the final unit to close his books out. And when we determine what the median sales price of those 7 units are, we went ahead and took the original sales, and then we arrayed them from lowest sale price to highest. And our median, or the one in the middle, was $200,000. We look around that median. There was 3 other sales at $200,000. And within our office, we would determine that to be what the value of each of the units should be for equalization purposes. The following year, 3 of those units sold. Unit 5 sold for $215,000. That was 8% higher than what the assessed value was. Unit 1 sold for $212,000. That was a 6% increase. And then Unit 3 sold at a discount. That person had to get on to another job out of state and took the first offer that he had. That's why he sold it a little bit lower. Looking at our sales ratio for our median ratio study, the one in the middle would be this sale at 6%. We utilize that 6% then against the original assessment, and even though we have differing sales prices, we add 6% to what the original assessment was. The new assessment then is $212,000, and you see that they're still all equalized. And that is the end of my slideshow. Do you have questions pertaining to how the median sales study goes into effect for all properties?
any comments or questions here? Okay, anything else that you're going to report on?
I could at this time continue with my full report if you'd like.
Go ahead.
The City of Dickinson true and full value for 2014, and this would be the value that will be utilized for tax purposes. That valuation this year is $2,274,180,346. That's an increase from 2013, which that value was $1,861,703, or $861,703,250. Total increase of $412,477,096, or an 18% increase. I'll remind you that in 2011, which was the first year that I was here, it was when the City of Dickinson's valuation just broke $1 billion. We've seen quite an increase in the last 3 years. Our 2014 commercial valuation also broke $1 billion this year at $1,189,546. The 2014 residential valuation was $1,273,990,800. There was increases in the valuation for both of those property classifications. New construction, we had $127,014,362 of new construction last year. I'm sorry, that was this year's new construction. And commercial was $91,136,762. That first number is going to be an error. The residential new construction was $112,484,500. So we're looking at closer to $200 million worth of new construction. New construction residential exemptions. And if you remember, we are stepping our way out of the new home exemption. The properties this year will get it for 1 year only. And there will be 155 properties eligible for that exemption. The exemptable amount is $15,300,000 as compared to 2013, which had 193 properties with the exemptable value of $19,400,000. Our residential median ratio was just below the 90% tolerance at 89.9%, and that triggered the increase that we gave across the board to residential properties to keep them within tolerance. After adjustments, the residential rate is now at 92.1%. Commercial properties median ratio prior to the adjustment was 68.9%, meaning that commercial properties were selling just below 70%, or they were assessed at 70% of what their sales prices were. Commercial is now adjusted in at 91.2%, so we're within tolerances after making our adjustments. We have no abatements at this time. Our taxable valuation for 2014, this will be the values utilized to determine the mills and the budget. Commercial taxable valuation is $50,009,477, and residential is $57,329,586. Total city taxable valuation $107,339,063. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Hirschfeld. Are there any comments or questions by the commission for him? Not at this time. We'll open the meeting to individuals who wish to make comments about the valuation of their property. We just ask that you come to the podium, state your name and the address of your property, and we'll hear your comments. So the mic is open. Is there anybody from the public that would like to address the commission?
My name is Vince Fitzik. I own the commercial building at 41 First Avenue West. It's an office building. I purchased the property in 1982, remodeled it into a law office. I haven't done any major improvements to it except for a roof since 1982. In May of 2013, last year, I was not able to get an appraisal when my taxable value went from $51,000 to $159,000 or thereabouts. I contacted the city assessor. I couldn't get an appraisal done because you can't get an appraisal in 30, 60 days done at all. But in May of 2013, I had an appraisal done on my building for mortgage purposes, and it was appraised at $110,000. I submitted a letter April 28, 2014 to the city assessor asking that the assessment be reduced to the appraised value of $110,000. It's just this $179,000. It was 100. You guys went it up to 158 last year. 179, it's getting out of hand. I mean, I can't do this. I mean, there's no way I can sell it for 179,000 market value. And the true and full value is coming up higher than the market value, which isn't right. It's not fair. And I'm asking the board to put it where it should be, at least at the market value, $110,000.
Mr. Fitzik, you had it appraised a year ago, did you say?
Yes,
And tell me again what the appraisal a year ago was?
$110,000.
110. And that was for mortgage
That
purposes?
was for mortgage purposes because of the, they only loan 80% or 85% of the market value, so that's what they appraised it at.
And is your mortgage 80% of the 110?
Yes, right around.
Is it, I'm not a real estate person, but it's my understanding that an appraiser will stop at the value that you need to get your mortgage. In other words, if the building, if he'd have kept going with the appraisal, he might have gone above 110, but since you were borrowing 80% of 110, as long as the appraised amount reaches what's required for the mortgage, they stop. Is that your understanding of the appraisal process?
Not really. I mean, that's what they valued it, and then they gave me, that's what the money I got was 80% of that figure.
You got your appraisal first
Right.
and then your mortgage?
Right.
Okay. Any other questions or comments here?
How many square feet are in the building?
Let's see.
Joe, do you have that on record in your
I think
books?
Joe
Square
should
footage?
have that.
I apologize,
Oh,
I did not
here.
bring his file with me.
Okay, I've got it here. It's, size of the lot is 3,525 square feet. The size of the building is 2,784 square feet.
2,000?
2,784 square feet. About 2,100 of it is actually office space. The back room is just storage. It's not finished or anything of that nature. Or the
And
furnace.
is there a basement in there?
No basement.
No basement. And there's no second floor either?
No second floor.
Did you this spring meet with Mr. Hirschfeld or any members of his staff?
I didn't get a chance to. I just dropped this off before May 1st at the front desk here.
So, Mr. Hirschfeld, are you prepared to speak to this issue at all at this point?
I am prepared to speak to this issue. I did get the appraisal. I did review it. I apologize. I did not contact Mr. Fitzig back. I kind of got placed underneath some other material, I guess, and I did not get that done. I reviewed that appraisal. It was done by an in-house appraiser. He did all three approaches to value. Although with what I know of the Dickinson market and what our cost manual is, the cost used in the appraisal that Mr. Fitzig gave us was not at market value. The other approaches to value weren't developed the way I'd like to seen. The income approach, the cap rate, and the lease rate was not expanded upon. He did not go to the market, or at least did not provide that information within the report to give any credibility to that amount. And then the sales approach to value, with it being a year old, the sales were from 2011 to 2012. There were three sales that I know of that were downtown commercial that could have been utilized in a downtown commercial report that were not in this appraisal presented to me. I just did not see enough credible information in this report to do a change in value, and I'm looking forward to the commercial revaluation, which will certainly help alleviate some of the concerns of the downtown commercial property owners.
When you said it was done by an in-house appraiser, did you mean in-town appraiser, or what did you mean by in-house?
I'm sorry, Mr. President. It was done by a representative of the lending institution itself.
Oh,
As
okay.
a staff appraiser or somebody within
Okay.
their organization.
Last year, when I talked to the city assessor about when it jacked up from 51 grand to 159,000, he showed me comparable sales. And the problem with those comparable sales that he's relying on is these buildings are fairly all new, all modernized or whatever. My office building, the carpet's frayed, one of the bathrooms doesn't work. I'm getting that fixed, but there hasn't been any improvements to it. And you can't tell me as a reasonable man or person that if I put that up for sale, I was going to get 159,000 last year or 179,000 this year for that property on a market basis. I mean, these other buildings are poor. The comparable sales in this report are as good or better than what I saw that he was using for this assessment last year and this year.
Mr. Fistic, Mr. President, can I ask him a question?
Oh, go ahead, yeah.
What is your address of the building and what year is it?
God, I don't even know what year it is. It's an old building. Frank X. Coling owned it back in 1982. I bought it. Let's see. I don't know if you remember, it was the old Sears store before, and I think an appliance store. And so it had to be gutted and remodeled at that time in 1982. I bought it for $50-some thousand, put in about $35,000 in improvements. I've got about $85,000 plus the new roof, which was done about 10 years ago.
Do we have any sales of older downtown buildings when we talk about comparable sales?
We do, Mr. President. I wouldn't say that any of them are like comparables. Our older downtown, whether they be two-story properties. Again, when we do evaluations on a mass appraisal, what we're looking at is how they sell compared to what their assessed value was. So if I have a downtown property assessed at $100,000 and it sells for $200,000, and if we have 2 or 3 of them, that sell for twice what they're valued at, that's kind of an indicator that downtown commercial properties would need to be increased 100% to bring them to market value. I don't know that my increases have been anywhere near what the market changes have been, and there's certainly within that there could be outlying properties that don't require that kind of an increase. That's why it's crucial that we do the commercial revaluation. We've had the foresight and just been kind of in the queue for the last 3 years waiting for this to come. This may be one of those properties that will greatly benefit from this from the commercial revaluation. Certainly, Dickinson City assessing staff doesn't have the time to go out and appraise 1,000 commercial properties individually, and that's I kind of think what Mr. Fitzig is asking for.
Right. We understand that. We also know that the real estate market in Dickinson has skyrocketed in the last 3 or 4 years. If I know from personal experience, the business I'm associated with sold a building this past July, I think it was, that went for 2.3 times its assessed value. It went for close to, I think it was 3 times what we paid for it, and we owned it less than 4 years. I mean, it's a crazy market, so it is possible for our commercial properties to have increased pretty dramatically in the past 3 or 4 years. I think we have a lot of evidence of that. Whether your particular property would increase like that, it's hard to say. I don't know. But I mean, I think we have a lot of evidence that the market has skyrocketed.
I know that.
Vince, can I have this question? What's the new appraisal price? 179?
179.
179. Okay.
175, 100.
what?
175,100.
170.
Previous year was 159,800, and I think the year before it was 51,000.
Just using some quick numbers, and I may be wrong on the cost new per square footage, but that could probably be done between, with no basement, one floor, one bathroom, $50 to $60 a square foot. If you take the $50 a square foot times the 2784, you come up at about 139,200. If you use the $60 per square foot, you come up at about 153,000. So the median between 55 and 60 is about 27,000 difference. Take half of that. Excuse me, $60 times the square footage is 167,000. Take the median between the 50 and the 60, you know, 55, you'd be at about 153,000. From what I've seen, it's in that ballpark that I think that could be rebuilt. Now, whether we just go on cost to rebuild or
How much a square foot do you think it could be rebuilt for?
on just a one-story, no basement structure like that, I think you could find somewhere between $50 and $60 a square foot.
A commercial building? I don't think so.
Well,
No. I mean, think about it. I mean, the commercial building's not like a warehouse or
yeah.
storage building. This is going to be finished. If you built it new, a new home today, Mrs. Stuckart, is running how many dollars per square foot?
200 minimum,
Yeah,
up to 225 depending.
Is that a framed, stick-built structure, Vince, or is that all brick?
I'm gonna think it's brick, because underneath that, a dark exterior there, I think it was brick that I put.
That'd make a difference.
You know, I think if you were
I think-
building a new commercial building today, and I mean, we've got several we could look at, whether it's law buildings or medical buildings, some office space. I can't believe you're gonna build it for less than, you know, a residence, or not much less at least. And so if you were going your direction, Mr. Steiner, I think you'd start with that high price and then depreciate it down to try to get to whether or not this is a right value. But I guess I would like to see the someone from the city assessor staff actually go over and just look at your office, you know, and
He has.
and see what they think. Mr. Colling, I think we don't have to make final decisions today. We've done this before where we can continue on before we close the rolls, but I know we do have a deadline with the county.
We do, Mr. President. You can continue the meeting from day to day, or as long as you would like to, until you have a final approved assessment rules. I believe the numbers have to be the county by, I believe it's June 2nd. Mr. Hirschfeld may be able to.
I believe that's correct. The first Tuesday, I believe, is when they have their Board of Equalization.
Yeah, I guess I'm not comfortable, yeah, I guess blessing the 179, and I'm not comfortable blessing the 110. I think the 110 is too low myself, but I know we have until 4:30. There's others here, and what I'd like to do is, we won't take any action on your building right now, but we request that they go over and look at it and see if maybe it's in as poor shape as you say it is in, so take a look at it.
I only got 5 more years to work. My youngest daughter gets out of college, and
Yeah.
I'm not putting anything into that building.
No, we understand, and I think we should go over and take a look at it and see. We know you're in downtown, it's an old building, so we understand that.
Okay, all right,
Okay.
thank you.
Who's next?
Good afternoon, Mr. President and board members. My name is Courtney Olson. It's my fiance, Rick Prestis, and we live at 257 6th Street West in Dickinson. My fiance has a lot better handle on the facts, so he might cut me off here and and correct me on a few things, but he promised he'd let me talk, so I'm going to talk. I understand that the valuation program implemented by the city assessor's office is effective in many situations in this town, but the reason for the appeal process is to have a further analysis of unique situations for properties that don't necessarily fit the square peg in the round hole. The city assessed our property that we just purchased at $480,000. In meeting with Mr. Hirschfield, which thank you for meeting with us, the city conceded that this house represents such a unique situation. Mr. Hirschfeld has stated that he believes the appraised value of our home was wrong because its uniqueness is such that it can't be accurately compared to other homes in the city. The home was appraised at $440,000. However, a major component to the assessor's valuation is also the use of comparables. So in sort of curing up those two, I think we need to delve a little bit further into the analysis of this home. And we believe that the only truly accurate way to value this house is by looking at the house itself and its performance on the market, which is very recent, so it's very accurate. You know, there's the old adage that states that something's only worth what others are willing to pay for it. And this house was listed at, in a very active, as you know, seller's market at $479,000 for 38 days. It didn't sell. It was then reduced to $433,000. It sat there for 41 days, did not sell. It was then reduced to $429,000, where it sat for 264 days. And we then purchased the home for $429,000. It was then appraised by Jason Hansen, who did a full appraisal at the Hansen Appraisal Company, and he assessed the value's home at $440,000. And therefore, gentlemen and Mrs. Dukart, in seeking the full and true value of the home as required by the Century Code 5702-27.1, we have to place the value at what the house has proven itself to be in the market, which is actually lower than the actual appraised value, but obviously appraising it at a price that it has been proven not to be worth is simply results in an unfair valuation of this property. And we're therefore asking the board to reconsider our property's valuation. Thank you.
I'll just add that the dates, we closed on the house week and 2 days ago, and our offer was accepted in early March, I believe, in the appraisal just after that. So those are the dates we're looking at.
And the city has it assessed at 480?
It was first assessed actually at 563, and then we met with Joe, and he admitted that they made a mistake of counting the third floor twice.
So it's assessed at 480 now.
By 480.
Now it's 480, yes, you're,
And you just closed on the house?
Yeah,
yes.
at 429.
Well, what's the assessor's perspective of this?
Certainly, Mr. President, Commission. I don't want to call this a unique property. When you call it a unique property, you know, you put a stigma on it. It's certainly a very nice, well-built house, good quality. It's in an area of town where predominantly older, smaller homes there. In a normal market, I've seen those homes have what's called external obsolescence. In this market, it's very difficult to determine obsolescence, especially external obsolescence, just due to the lack of homes. If you're looking to move to Dickinson and you're can afford to purchase a house of a certain value, you grab it where you can to make sure that you get your housing secured, and I'm sure your employment also. This particular house, they did go over the dates it was listed, although there's one date that I don't have that I would like. Do you know when the certificate of occupancy was provided for this house?
I've got the MLS stuff with that. Says I'm not sure.
Is this a new home?
It is.
It was built in 2012.
Well, finished in 2013, and the builder has been living there for
I do not see that. That was the question I had, was when the house was actually completed to be available for sale. We see a lot of these homes being listed prior to commencement of construction. It's difficult to sell a house at this price without it actually being there and visible to a buyer. Oh, you may have certain model homes that you can go review and, okay, this is what my house is going to look like, and certainly you would be comfortable putting a contract on that. This builder doesn't have any such model home to compare it to. And
I'm sorry.
Go
If I may
ahead.
interrupt. It has been highly advertised and completed and furnished since at least last June. It's been in the front of the Home and Land magazine that comes out every month. So I understand what you're saying, but I don't.
What is
that
the
applies here.
address again?
What is
I'm sorry?
What's the address?
257 6th Street West?
Okay.
It's about a block south of Old St. Joe's.
And it's a new home.
It is a new home. The builder bought the lot and built on it.
And he lived in it for.
Mr. President,
Yes.
in my opinion, unless a home appraises at a certain price, you cannot buy it, you cannot get a loan on it. So I myself don't think it would be worth more than $440 because that's what it appraised at, and you certainly cannot get more money than what a home is worth. I'm sorry, Mr. Hirschfeld, but that's the way it is.
Well, I don't disagree with you. After reviewing this appraisal, all the comparables utilized were inferior in quality to what the subject house was. There was minimal adjustments made to 3 of the most inferior, and the others there was no quality adjustment made to those. The thing I was looking for in the appraisal was whether the appraiser himself was able to determine any external obsolescence, and there was none noted, and therefore the one item that I thought might detract from the value wasn't recognized by the other appraiser either. After we did correct the square footage of the property and revalued it, we ran comparables of our own and determined that's where the $480,000 value became most accurate.
Yes, sir. And the comparables that you went through as well are just poor comparisons in the 50 percentile and low 60s. And, you know, he's made, in our conversations, Mr. Hirschfeld's made comments about, oh, you know, I just think maybe if it was in a different, and these houses that are comparable, they're nowhere near it. He's like, he's just saying maybe if it was in a different neighborhood, then it would be a higher price. And our point is it's not. It's in this neighborhood and it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, and I would add that if we were to ever sell it, unless there's a glaring problem wrong with the appraisal that someone who would buy it would be similar or the same. So saying that there was maybe, you know, a little bit of variance in the appraisal, I mean, I don't think that there is nearly that big of a variance in it. And as Mrs. Dukart said, we wouldn't be able to sell it if it was appraised off of this appraisal or if a different person appraised it.
There's just these gray areas that talking about comparables and obsolescence, and so I feel like the only way we can solve that is just look at the facts, how long it sat on the market. They asked $479, it didn't sell. They asked $433, it didn't sell. Sat for 264 days, $429 in this market, which we all know is pretty robust. So I mean,
The thing with your property also is you're the nicest home in an old neighborhood. And the drawing features in that area at probably for another 3 months was the hospital. But once that moves, your value is not going to be there.
mm-hmm.
And that, I think most buyers recognize that. And you are on a lot that the building is almost totally on the lot.
Yeah,
I don't
there's-
think you have grass anywhere, do you?
Barely a little bit in the front.
Okay. That's the problem there, too.
Yeah.
Mr. President, if we're appraising it at $480,000 and they have 440,000 on mine, and I think that they have more support for the 440,000 with the numbers than we do at the 480, because it is a different type of home that we just don't have, in my feeling, enough information to say it's a $480,000 home. We don't have the comparables for this here. I would be in favor of doing an abatement down to the 440,000.
Commissioner Steiner, if I may, I ran off comparable report for this as well, and showing how we arrived at that value and the support. The adjustments that we utilize are statistically relevant based upon 300 sales in the market, where typical appraiser's making his judgment call and not putting near the statistical or the statistical data to use that we do. And I do have these prepared if you'd like to review them.
Sure, that'd be fine. Are you saying that then they got a deal on their house at 440,000?
I kind of lean towards that partially, and part of that is the purchase price of their lot by the builder was $11,000. Their appraiser valued that lot at $35,000. I would concur with that value. There's $20,000 of value that that builder's not require in order to reach the same profit level that another builder would.
Why, but that, I'm sorry.
Have you been to their home?
I have not personally.
You must go. You must go. I would not approve anything above 440. Your home is beautiful, but you are in an old neighborhood with very small lots. And that is not going to change. And it's always location, location, location.
I don't disagree, but my question is, what is what percentage do we utilize to discount this property? There's no evidence in the market to support anything that I have. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I cannot discount the quality of the home. That would throw off the rest of the valuations.
Mr. Hirschfeld, if the home was on the market for
2 years.
2 years, okay, for an extended period of time, and it finally just sold at $429,000, it does, to me, too, seem harsh to say it's worth 480. I mean, if it had been on the market a handful of days and they were the first ones there, then you could make a stronger argument. But if it was on the market for an extended period of time, it finally sold at 429, and they're willing to take, and they have not a in-house appraiser, but this is one of Dickinson's qualified appraisers, has appraised it at 440. Why wouldn't we accept that appraised value as evidence?
Certainly, I mean, we can, and I recognize, you know, the marketing time and that it's sold at a lower value. My question is, you know, if it is external obsolescence, you know, with the smaller lot, as Mrs. Dukart said, and in its neighborhood, what is the rate of external obsolescence do we apply? And their appraiser did not come to that conclusion either. I'm kind of left. Do we just discount it, the $40,000 to the appraised value, or?
Well, when you look at your own report from 2013, homes, say $400,000 and above, there are quite a few less sales at those levels than there are, say, $300,000 and below, correct?
Correct.
So there's probably going to be a greater variation in how those sales are valued. And yes, you take this home apparently and maybe put it on a larger lot in a newer neighborhood where maybe there are also a few more homes of comparable value to it, then perhaps your number would be closer to correct, and this house wouldn't have sat on the market as long as it did. But I think when you have a recent sale and an appraisal, it's awfully hard for us to say those are wrong. I mean, that's, and maybe it doesn't quite fit your formula, but.
Well, you know, like I said, we pulled comparables as well. Most of our comparables sold within 5% of the appraised value, most of them a little bit more. statistically, when the software system made its adjustments, I mean, you'll see the inconsistency that's in the market, definitely, but the number that it arrived at was the 480,000.
How large is the lot that this one is on?
7,050 feet.
7,050 square feet?
Yes, sir.
So it's not a very large lot.
No, I think it was standard lot at
Yeah.
10,000.
Well, and the fact is, you cannot compare that home to a home in State Edition or, say, on Cedar Drive. It is in an old neighborhood with small lots, and you have to come into your driveway from the alley. You can't change it, so I guess I recommend that we adjust it, or you go back and look and you'll come to a comparison what we feel is worth.
Ms. Stuckert, is that a recommendation, or are you moving a motion?
Well, I'm going to make a motion that we adjust it to 440.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Okay, we'll go ahead and vote. Ms. Stuckert?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, so the motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to address the Board of Adjustment?
Mr. President, members of the board, my name is Perry Baseflug. My wife Annette and I own commercial properties at 1300 East Villard, 1430 and 1470. I will confess that I was a bit naive with this appeal process, so I probably didn't prep as well as should have for it. I'm not nearly as prepped with appraisals and so on and so forth as the previous people at the podium, but I guess I will express my grievance. I discussed my issues with Mr. Hirschfeld this past Thursday, I believe it was, and he did point out to me the median form of appraisal that he displayed before. I still don't feel that it's fair. 1300 East Villard is actually the property by which we operate our business, Baseflug Trailers. That building was built in 1998 at a cost of approximately $140,000. In 2010 or 11, we put some concrete exterior to it at the tune of about $50,000. And about that same time, the building was re-roofed and re-sided due to the tornado damage from the previous years. In 2011, the assessed true and full value of that building and property was $267,000. It bumped 11% the following year, 80% last year, another 34% this year. Our building today is now valued, according to the assessor's office, at $714,000, which is a 270% increase in 3 years. Now, I understand that maybe things needed to catch up a little bit, and I understand what the real estate market is in Dickinson, but I think that to see this magnitude of increases is just totally out of hand, especially since there has been no further improvements of this property in those years as well. Going further down the street to the east, 1430 and 1470 are actually two buildings that sit on the same parcel of land, and they're included in one parcel for purposes of assessment by the assessor's office. Now that building that actually is on, the major building that's on it was actually constructed back in the late 60s, early 70s, so it's an ancient steel frame building, it's red iron. We did purchase that property in 2008 or 9, I believe it was, so I apologize, these are estimates, but I'm trying to just portray where we're at. Purchased the property and the building for $115,000. The following year, we put about $50,000 worth of updates to it with a new roof and new siding. So we have a total investment of $165,000. So I would dare say that in 2011, we were getting a deal with a true and assessed value of $111,000, but today it is assessed at nearly $440,000, an increase of 292%. Again, these amounts to me are just so terribly excessive, willing to pay my fair share as well as my wife, but I failed to see how we could ever get this type of value back out of these buildings when we do. And possibly what I'm using for a benchmark is our residence, which is 225 7th Street Southeast. We all know that the residential market has changed, has been referred to several times today. And that to me is far more livable. We've seen an increase there of 37% in the past 3 years, which again, I fail to understand why we see 37% on residential property, but yet our commercial properties bump up the way they are. I don't know exactly what they should be. I've not had them appraised. Maybe I should do so. At this point, because I possibly don't have a benchmark to rely on, I don't know what to ask for other than to state on record that this is just terribly excessive, it cannot continue. I understand also that mill levies change. We probably aren't going to see the total amount in taxes levied increasing by those percentages, but my fear is what happens 3 to 5 years down the road when things do slow down, and inevitably they will. Are we going to see that reversal? I'm thinking not quite so quick. So in the meanwhile, we will be paying taxes on that grossly inflated amount. So that being said, my request would be to have some type of reevaluation, and maybe I need to confer with Mr. Hirschfeld on that in the future. I just don't know what my options are. Again, that is my lack of being familiar with the system.
Thank you, Mr. Baselug. I think with the real estate market in Dickinson, with the oil impact, we saw the increases first in residential property, and of course you have a lot more of that property that changes hands, and so when you start to look at comparable sales on the residential side, there's lots of sales to look at, and the values are known, readily known, and so you see residential property go up first. Then as the impact intensified here, we began to see much more commercial property, whether it was the land itself or buildings, begin to change hands. And of course there's a lot of variety in commercial property, and I think so it takes a while before they have enough comparable sales to really start moving the adjustments or the appraisals. And I think most of us would agree that what we had commercial property appraised at 6, 7, 8 years ago probably was on the low side of where we should have been. So between the comparable sales and maybe starting low, things have really accelerated, as you pointed out. And I know you were in the audience earlier and heard my remarks. The property we sold was out on East Villard. We had put, in the 4 years we owned it, we had not invested much, if anything, in it. It's a very strong market. I think without you having an independent appraisal, it's awfully hard for us to make an adjustment. We'll ask for Mr. Hirschfeld's opinion here, but when you ask what you could do, I think one of the things you could do is actually get an independent appraisal. But Mr. Hirschfeld, we'll let you state your side of this property.
Thank you, Mr. President, Commissioners. Due to the lateness of the call in the week there, I did not have an opportunity yet to personally view these properties. However, in our sales ratio studies and the numbers from 2012, when I looked at an awful lot of metal buildings that had sold, our assessed values were at 10 to 30% of what the sales prices were, indicating that a 1,000 to a 300% increase would be warranted to like properties. That was 2012. We've had after making the adjustments we did, our metal buildings are now coming in at around 40%. So we're gaining, well, I say gaining, we're still not close to full value on metal buildings. Certainly the 300% increase, which we're close to, I think on Mr. Baseplug's buildings, we may be near market value there, and certainly look forward to the commercial revaluation that'll be going on this year to do a personal appraisal of these buildings and see what they're really worth.
But the numbers we get back from the state showed that in general, commercial property was valued at 68% of its market value last year.
That is correct. Commercial properties as a whole, with apartments and metal buildings being the furthest from those tolerances as
Which
well.
indicate, where we had things appraised at or assessed at, not appraised, assessed at, we were quite a ways off what the actual market.
Well, I don't deny any of the points you made, and Mr. Hirschfeld as well. As I said earlier, it just seems so terribly excessive. And again, I wish I would have familiarized myself with the process earlier, because we did purchase property directly south of this property 2 years ago, which actually falls within Stark County, since the BN tracks are the limit there. And granted, that was purchased, would have been in August of 2012. I do have that appraisal on record, and it surely doesn't come up to the square footage cost that we see on these. So, I appreciate the opportunity to speak, and I understand, since I'm not as prepared as I should be, there really is no action can be taken today, but I would just like it to be on record that I do dispute that.
Yeah, well,
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for being here.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Jason Frederick. I'm here regarding a property at 2478 Sims. I own a condo unit. It's a commercial condo unit. It basically is a shop with 6 lights in it, liner paneled, and a hanging corner heater. It was completed last year, and I purchased the property from Kurt Martin. There's 4 units in there. Kurt kept 2. I bought 1, and another guy bought 1. I paid $212,000 for it six months ago, and I got my true and full assessment value today, or a couple weeks ago, at $397,100. It's 3,000 square feet. It's got a concrete floor, and it's got a stub in for a bathroom, but it's not completed. There is no way current market value on that unit is $397,000. I didn't have it appraised because it was under $250,000 and it's not required by my lending institution. I mean, it is a metal building with a 25-foot concrete apron on it, and there's nothing there. I did meet with Mr. Hirschfeld regarding it, and I got the same story that we've heard. Our metal buildings are going through the roof, and we're waiting for this evaluation to happen within a year, and hopefully at that time the values will be adjusted accordingly. But I don't feel that I should have to pay taxes on that value for a year until they decide it's worth less. I mean, I don't believe Mr. Martin gave me that good of a deal. I mean, the building right behind it is, I believe, Stallion Oil, I think. I mean, we sit on 1 acre. Our building's 12,000 square feet. I have 3,000 of it. It's on 1 acre, and it's assessed at about 1.6 million if you round up. Stallion Oil is on 3 acres, has like 2,800 square feet of finished office space, 2 buildings, a mostly concrete lot, and it's assessed at $2 million.
Jason, how old is the building?
It's not even a year, probably a year old.
So it's a new building.
It's a new building, yep. It's a wood frame. Like I said, it's got steel panel roof and sides, and then the inside is liner paneled. I mean, if I have to have it appraised, I will, but there's no way that this thing is going to appraise for $400,000.
Mr. Hirschfeld?
Mr. Frederick did stop by my office. We went over his property, and line by line, we have it entered in like we have every other building. It's consistently valued with the rest of the new properties in Dickinson. As to the sale price and why this one appears to be out of line, I have no answer.
Comments, questions?
Well, I suggest that you review it, because you are a builder. You know what the costs are.
I mean, I can. It's about $135 a square foot for a steel building. When you figure it out that way, I mean, I don't believe a steel building shell is $134 a square foot with nothing finished inside it other than liner paneled walls.
I think your steel buildings, you can build for 80 or 90.
Yeah,
I think that's more in line with what a steel building, what you're talking about.
I mean, and they're not here, but Mr. Martin and Cole Brew is the other one, CDB Homes that has the other unit. I mean, we're all in agreement. I mean, it's just not I mean, I don't know what the cost to build was. Like I said, I paid $212,000 for my unit. I think Cole paid $215,000 because his was on the end right by the street, and Mr. Martin kept the middle units. But I mean, I would hope either Mr. Martin wasn't that naive or just really trying to do us a big favor by selling us to him at that price. So,
Well, even at $90 a square foot would be $270. I have a problem, and I visited with Mr. Hirschfield regarding current sales and then raising them so high right away within, mine was like in a couple months, yours is in 6 months. I don't see properties appreciating that much that quickly. It usually takes a couple of years before you get that appreciation value. So,
the second property I'm representing I'm a partner in is 522 12th Street West, which is the La Quinta Hotel. We completed that property, I believe, in April of 2012 when we opened. In 2012, the assessment was 134.5, which is the land, which we understand that we were under construction. 2013, it went up to $5.5 million. 2014, it's now $6,033,000. A $530,000 increase on a building that was built within the last 2 years. I mean, maybe. I mean, the 5.5 million is probably just shy of, I mean, we were about $6 million probably to build it. I'm not saying that the value is totally off here. What I'm saying is that it's hard for a business to budget for a $500,000 or $600,000 value increase, when we get it in April. I mean, everybody has their budgets out. I mean, we assume that if it's just assessed after construction within a year, it's not going to raise that, I mean, to over 10% in 1 year.
Mr. President, I contacted a contractor last week. I've not talked to Mr. Friddick at all. I was working on one through work, and it's a brand new building, 6,000 square feet. And this guy, he's a realtor, so he sells a lot of them. Plus, he builds a lot for himself. He built this one, 6,000 square feet, with just a regular steel building, bathroom, small office space. And I asked him what it costs to build those type of buildings. He said $60 to $80 a square foot. That's what it costs to build them new. So you take $60, $80 on 3,000 square foot. I don't agree that it's 397,000 as an appraised value on this one. I think we're looking at 250, 260 tops on this type of a structure. Is what the what I would consider the true and full value of this building.
I mean,
You don't have an independent appraisal.
I don't. Like I said, the bank only required me to get an appraisal once it's 250 or more, so I didn't have to appraise it because I have the money down. But, I mean, in this situation, I would probably consider having it appraised because of, I mean, we're probably talking it's $150,000 overvalued. So,
Well, Mr. Hirschfield, we've asked you to look at Mr. Fitzig's building. Would you be willing to look at this one also? I mean, physically look at it and see if, sounds to me like there hasn't been a lot of work done in the interior, which might make a difference in how you view the building, but
By all means, I'd certainly go back out and review it again.
I mean, the only unit that has any finished office space in it is one that's rented out to Valley Plumbing, and it has a small office and a small bathroom. Otherwise, they're just warehouse. I mean, they're,
and this is, you're a one unit, this is a condo situation.
yes, one unit out of four.
And there's one out of four. I would suggest if you're gonna look, then you look at all four.
You know, and I know when I met with Mr. Hirschfield, we had a sprinkler system in that building too, which the building isn't sprinkled, so I know there was a value adjustment there that needs to be made.
Well, Mr. Fidler, we'll go look at it, so, which
Yeah.
means we'll delay taking action on your request till he gets back and reports. And if you were in here earlier, we know we have to do that prior to June 2nd, which means we'll have to schedule a special meeting at some point.
Mr. President, if we're going to look at this one, it seems we should look at Mr. Baseflug's too. It was a similar significant increase.
Okay, I'm fine with that. I mean, we didn't take action one way or another on his request, so.
You know, I guess my concern is if the market does shift back and values start going the other direction, I mean, are we gonna wait till we have this appraisal company come out and reevaluate everything and we'll just keep paying until we know what that's gonna be?
No, that isn't the way the system works. And if you look back into the 80s, once the market, crashed here, the value of commercial properties and residential properties went down with it. It takes a while on going up, and it takes a while coming down. I think there could be, if you had a consumer group here, there could be a consumer group who could make quite a case that those of us who own commercial property got by for several years at some pretty low valuations, and that's kind of catching up now. But if the market crashes, the system will correct and they'll come down.
I guess my concern, with this being such a new building, I mean, visiting Mr. Herschel, if we're off $150,000, and I'm assuming 1% of that's tax, so that's $1,500. And, and his comment to me was, we're having all these buildings reevaluated.
Mr. Fidrick, we're going to come and look.
Okay, well.
And there might be some others, and we're 5 minutes
Thank
late.
you for your time.
So, thank you. Next.
Kevin Lamley with Butler Machinery. After listening, we find ourselves kind of in the boat of the last two gentlemen. Year over year, from last year to this year, we took over a $500,000 increase in assessment. Now, being a little unfamiliar with the process, certainly came here today, talked to the assessor this morning, a little late, but said we need to come kind of find out what's going on. I apologize, we don't have an appraisal done, but would certainly like to get on the record today and say we would like to look at this. We're all for going out and getting an appraisal done and coming back to you and saying, here's what we think the property's at. And if we need to make adjustments at that time, we'd ask you to take that into consideration.
Absolutely.
A little, more than anything, 15, 16%, when you put it that way, some of that's in line. A little bit, we built in 2009, so it's fairly recent, so we took a little tough when we saw the number. So with that, if that's easy, I'll let somebody else talk.
All right, thank you.
Okay?
I think that'd be very valuable information that not only can we use for Butler, but for other buildings in town too, once we get those appraisals.
Mr. President, Commissioners, in regards to the Butler building, it came off of a new building exemption, new construction, a new business exemption. I was in that property this summer, so I have a pretty fresh valuation and inspection of that property
So
already.
part of the $500,000 increase is because of the exemption expiring?
part of it, yes, and then with the increases to all commercial as well. So I'm pretty familiar with that building.
Okay.
I will, if you'd like, I will go back out and re-look at that building. I mean, at your discretion.
You know, we can't look at them all, and I've been in that building. It's a large building. It's a pretty complex building, and unless you discover an obvious error in your process, I think, you know, to dispute your number, you actually do need an appraisal, a formal appraisal, and if.
And we'll get that, but I do believe that we have taken increases even though it's been on the exemption in the assessed value over the years, even though we're on the exemption. So the point is, this is just year-over-year increases.
Okay. I think a building of that size, you know, an appraisal would be a good move, you know.
We may do an appraisal and be sorry for it. We may be sorry about what we're wishing for here, okay?
Well, if you get it, you don't have to show it to us, you know. Yes.
Mr. President and Commissioners, I'm here regarding a property at 721 4th Avenue West. It's a little house that I bought, which is right next door to me. I bought it for $64,000.
Excuse me, we know who you are, but you're being
Oh,
filmed.
I'm sorry. Jim Rice.
There you go. Thank you, Mr. Rice.
Hope that's all I forget.
Yeah.
I didn't talk to anybody so far. To tell you the truth, you know, I got this letter and I set it aside, and my wife reminded me today that this meeting was, so I hot-footed it down here. The appraised value is $121,300, and my only survey is through coffee and talking to a few other people with real houses that, you know, this is within 20 or 30,000 of evaluation of, you know, real houses with 2-stall garages and 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms, and this, I don't know what the square footage is on this, but it's something like 700 or 800 square feet. It's got a little tiny detached garage, and I bought it for $64,000 in '08, and I just can't believe that it's worth, well, my house that is right next door, you know, it's within 30,000 of that, you know, and that's, I haven't talked to anybody, but this just didn't seem right.
Well, if you bought it in '08 for $64,000, it could very well be right. I mean, if you think about apartments, 2-bedroom apartments costing over $2,000 a month in some of the apartment buildings in town, that tends to bring up the value of properties, and especially properties like this that are more modestly priced to begin with. So, I mean, again, I know it sounds like a pretty significant increase, but in this residential market, I think it could be right. Mrs. Stuckart, do you know the property?
I'm just mentally getting it placed. It's up behind Hagan Junior High, right?
Up on top of the hill.
Right, okay. How old is it?
I'm pretty sure that my grandfather lived in it when it was out in the country before it was moved into the town.
How many bedrooms on the main floor?
One.
Is it by that retaining wall?
Yep.
95. That's what I'd appraise it at, or I mean, a CMA would come in about 95,000 max.
That's kind of what I thought.
And what is your figure that you were given?
121,300 for this year. And it took a huge jump. I should have been here last year,
But here, you don't have a formal appraisal for us.
no, I don't. Just talking to people with ordinary houses and what they're paying, this seems pretty steep.
Well, and I would agree with you, one-bedroom homes are one bedroom. That's it. They don't grow.
Well, you're probably not prepared to talk about this one, are you, or are you?
Mr. President, no, I'm not. I'm not
No.
familiar at all. I
Yeah.
add it to my list of properties to look at in the next 2 weeks.
So we'll delay action on it and have them go look at it, if that's
Okay.
okay with you?
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anybody else? Okay, we'll declare this part of the meeting closed. And so, Mr. Colling, then we wouldn't be acting on accepting the assessor's report since we've left 3 or 4 of these properties open for him to go look at.
Mr. President, if you wish, you could approve the assessor's report except for the properties that you would like to hold over. And then when you would meet again, it would be only those properties that you would meet on to confirm the assessment roll as it pertains to those particular properties.
I like that suggestion. Would the commissioner care to move that motion?
I'll make that motion with the exception of the ones that you're going to review.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
We have the motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, then we'll vote. Mrs. Stuckert?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
The chair votes aye, so the motion carries. Then I think the next item of business is to act on the exemptions. And those are the Renaissance Zone exemptions. I guess it's a 1-year residential exemption now.
That is correct, Mr. President.
And then the, I guess for lack of a better word, the charitable exemptions. Is that? And we deal with those one motion at a time. I guess they're called real estate exemptions. So do I have that right, Mr. Colling?
Yes, Mr. President, that's correct.
Okay, so in your handouts, there are an attachment. I think there are 2 Renaissance Zone exemptions, Mr. Hirschfeld, is that correct?
That is also correct.
Okay. So would there be a motion regarding the Renaissance Zone exemptions?
Move to approve, Mr. President.
Second?
We have the motion and the second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mrs. Stuckert?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. So the next one then is the 1-year residential exemption. And there's a listing of those.
I'll move that we approve the residential exemption.
That is correct.
Okay.
Second it.
We have the motion and the second. Is there any discussion? We'll go ahead and vote then. Mr. Jackson, Mr. Altman,
Aye.
Mr. Steiner,
Aye.
Mrs. Stuckert.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries. And then there's a list of real estate exemptions, and these are primarily churches and medical facilities. Is there any comments or questions regarding those?
I'll make a motion to approve the real estate property tax exemption under NDCC.
Is there a second? We have the second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. Mrs. Stuckert?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Are there any tax abatements for us to consider?
Mr. President, Commissioners, at this time, there are no tax abatements.
Okay. So, Mr. Colin, would we be adjourning the meeting or recessing the meeting?
Mr. President, you would recess the meeting until such time as you would wish to meet again.
Okay, is there a motion to that regard?
So moved.
I'll second.
We have the motion and the second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson? Mrs. Stuckert?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. The motion carries. We are recessed. We will take a 5-minute safety break and then be back to begin the commission meeting.